Continuing from the last chapter, with Lin Dong's help, little Yin successfully evolved, breaking through to the Nirvana stage. What's more, he gained the ability to speak like a human, officially becoming Lin Dong's brother. The city of the ancient hall was extraordinarily vast and magnificent. This sense of grandeur became even more overwhelming as Lin Dong stepped into its boundaries. On the broad streets, crowds surged like waves, their noise rising to the sky, spreading far and wide. Lin Dong and little Yin entered the city without pausing anywhere else. They headed straight toward the city center. At the center of the city stood a towering palace, the most striking structure in the city. From there, one could overlook the entire city. Unlike the bustling parts of the city, this area was rather tranquil. Of course, such a unique place wasn't accessible to just any ordinary dynasty. Only the advanced dynasties and Nirvana stage experts had the qualification to enter. Common folks could only gaze longingly from outside. Perhaps due to some connection between the ancient keys within the towering palaces, Lin Dong sensed three faint fluctuations. These were clearly from the factions that had obtained the other three ancient keys: the Nether Spring Dynasty, the Primordial Wilderness Dynasty, and the Demonic Rock Dynasty. This sensing was clearly mutual. Given the abilities of the leaders from the three dynasties, as Lin Dong sensed their presence, they also seemed to have detected the ancient key in Lin Dong's possession. Within these palaces, there was a grand golden hall. Inside, it was as vast as a plaza. At this moment, many figures were present in the hall, each exuding a powerful and formidable aura, clearly not ordinary individuals. Those who could be seated in this hall were almost all famous dynasties and powerful figures from the northwestern region of the ancient battlefield. Being seated here was, in itself, a symbol of strength. On the right side of the hall, three figures sat on chairs. A powerful aura faintly emanated from them. To the left was a burly man with a bare upper body. Tattoos covered his skin, giving off a primal aura. Though he sat quietly, he was like a wild beast from ancient times, one not to be underestimated. To the right was a woman in a purple-black gown, her appearance cold and aloof. Her long black hair flowed, and her slender figure added a touch of elegance to the hall. In the center of the three sat a handsome man in black robes. A warm smile adorned his face, but the occasional glint in his eyes hinted that he was no benign character. Behind this man in black stood a familiar figure, dressed in white. It was Shi Xuan, who had once crossed paths with Lin Dong. Evidently, this black-robed man was none other than Shi Kun, the true leader of the Demonic Rock Dynasty. The one who holds the fourth ancient key has finally appeared. Shi Kun's gaze suddenly lifted, and the warm smile on his face grew wider. His voice echoed through the grand hall. The hall, which had been filled with whispers, suddenly grew quiet. Many people's eyes held a playful look. Everyone here was no easy mark. Even facing the Demonic Rock Dynasty, they wouldn't show the same fear as other dynasties might. There were only 4 ancient keys, and no one was certain if these keys had other uses besides unlocking the ancient secret repository. Nonetheless, possessing an ancient key undoubtedly amplified one's influence in such a place. Hence, everyone present coveted the keys. Of course, the 4 ancient keys were already claimed, and the 3 great dynasties, Demonic Rock, Primordial Wilderness, and Nether Spring, were not easy to deal with. Taking a key from them would come at a steep price. As a result, most dynasties didn't dare covet theirs, making Lin Dong, the holder of the last key, the easiest target. Everyone here had heard of Lin Dong's recent escape from Shi Xuan's grasp. But for them, that was hardly a deterrent. They were leagues above ordinary dynasties. Oh, haha, I'm quite curious to see if this Lin Dong has 3 heads and 6 arms. To have stolen the ancient key from right under your Demonic Rock Dynasty's nose. The burly man on the left laughed, his voice booming like thunder as he glanced toward the hall's entrance. Serves you right. When your Demonic Rock Dynasty first received news about the ancient key, you feared alarming others and thus only sent some minor figures. Who would have thought that Lin Dong would snatch it away? The woman in the purple-black gown remarked calmly. The Primordial Wilderness Dynasty and the Nether Spring Dynasty were no weaker than the Demonic Rock Dynasty, so they spoke without any hesitation. That boy was just lucky. If he hadn't used the ancient key to flee last time, I would have captured him right then, Shi Xuan, standing behind Shi Kun, said coldly. I was initially worried he wouldn't dare show his face, but who knew he'd be so bold? Since he's here, let's make him return what he's taken. As Shi Xuan spoke, a murderous gleam surged in his eyes. The recent news of Lin Dong's escape from his grasp had spread like wildfire, greatly damaging his reputation. He had already made up his mind that once Lin Dong was captured, he would make him taste the agony of a fate worse than death. Your Demonic Rock Dynasty already has one ancient key. Why not leave this one for the rest of us? As Shi Xuan's words fell, a few chuckles resonated throughout the hall. Shi Xuan's brows furrowed, and he was about to retort when Shi Kun raised his hand, smiling. Whoever can deal with that brat, the last ancient key will be theirs. Haha, brother Shi Kun, you are truly generous. Rest assured, his head will certainly belong to the Demonic Rock Dynasty. This way, everyone will know the consequences of crossing your dynasty. Some people laughed, their demeanor suggesting that capturing Lin Dong and seizing the ancient key was an easy feat. It seems quite a few people are after my head. However, just as those laughs filled the air, a light chuckle suddenly echoed from outside the hall, slowly reverberating within. The atmosphere fell silent in an instant, and numerous eyes, filled with curiosity, turned toward the hall's entrance. The smile on Shi Kun's face remained unchanged, but he showed no intention of looking up. He continued to play with an iron ball in his hand, a faint, sinister smile tugging at his lips. Lin Dong, standing behind Shi Kun, Shi Xuan's eyes suddenly turned icy, and he hissed through gritted teeth. The burly man with the bare chest and the woman in the purple-black gown both lifted their heads, their gazes slightly mocking as they looked toward the hall entrance. Did this guy not realize that most of the people here were waiting for him? In their eyes, Lin Dong, hailing from the low-ranking Great Yin dynasty, had some courage but was clearly unaware of his limits. Under the scrutiny of those eyes, the soft sound of footsteps could be heard in the sunlight at the hall's grand entrance. Moments later, two figures slowly walked into the vast hall, one following the other. Swish! As these two figures appeared, every gaze in the hall instantly focused on them. The ones entering the hall were, of course, Lin Dong and his companion. As soon as Lin Dong stepped inside, his gaze fell straight ahead and locked onto the black-robed man seated in the stone chair before Shi Xuan. From this man, Lin Dong sensed a far stronger aura than Shi Xuan's. Kid, we've been waiting for you for quite some time. Since you're here, hand over the ancient key. The silence in the hall lasted only a brief moment before numerous gazes turned greedy. A figure exuding a powerful aura was the first to stand up. Judging by the fluctuation emanating from him, he was not much different from the Demonic Rock Dynasty's Thunder Snake, indicating that he, too, was someone who had failed the Nirvana Tribulation. This man acted decisively. Knowing that many present were eyeing the ancient key in Lin Dong's possession, he understood he couldn't afford to fall behind. So, just as his voice dropped, his body abruptly lunged forward. With a powerful punch, surging primordial energy condensed into a form, sweeping toward Lin Dong like a torrential flood. Faced with this sudden, fierce assault, Lin Dong's expression remained unchanged. He raised his hand, and a strange gray-black energy spread out, enveloping his entire arm, which he then swung downward lightly. A muffled thud echoed through the hall, and to everyone's surprise, the powerful attacker was sent flying back, his body dragging across the hall floor for dozens of meters before he finally came to a stop. A low murmur swept through the hall as some people's expressions subtly changed. To knock back a failed Nirvana Tribulation survivor with just one move, this level of strength. I didn't come here to give you the ancient key. I'm just here to tell you that this ancient key belongs to me. So, you all should stop having any foolish ideas. Lin Dong lightly patted his palm, his gaze directed toward the Demonic Rock Dynasty at the front, smiling faintly. What audacity! How dare you speak like that here? You're truly overestimating yourself. Shi Xuan's face instantly darkened, and a sinister smile crept across his lips. With a fierce stomp, he could no longer hold back and dashed forward. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched Shi Xuan approach, filled with a powerful aura. Yet he made no move. Instead, he calmly lowered his hands. At the moment Lin Dong's hands lowered, little Yin, who had been standing silently behind him, suddenly took a step forward. His previously dull eyes suddenly surged with a terrifyingly fierce aura. "Get lost!" With a low growl, little Yin threw a punch, directly colliding with Shi Xuan head-on. Under the watchful eyes of many in the hall, little Yan's fist collided heavily with the charging Shi Xuan. This guy has a death wish. At the moment of impact, some people couldn't help but sneer. Shi Xuan's strength was formidable even here. He was a true first Nirvana stage expert, far superior to the previous man who had failed the Nirvana tribulation. With this punch, even an ordinary Nirvana stage expert would suffer serious injuries. Bang! However, just as these sneers echoed, a deep and heart-shaking sound suddenly erupted from the point of collision. A powerful shockwave instantly swept out. Underneath the two combatants, the solid stone floor of the hall cracked open with fissures as thick as an arm. Then, to everyone's astonishment, they saw the previously imposing Shi Xuan suddenly stumble backward in disarray. His feet skidded across the floor for more than 10 steps, and with each step, he left a deep imprint on the ground. How is that possible? This scene undoubtedly caused most of the faces in the hall to change dramatically. In the next moment, all eyes were instantly fixed on the area where the dust was settling. There, a tall, muscular figure stood unmoved before Lin Dong. That fierce clash hadn't made him take even a single step back. The hall, which had been somewhat noisy, suddenly fell silent. Eyes filled with shock were fixed on little Yin, who stood in front of Lin Dong. To send a first Nirvana stage expert flying with a single punch. Could this guy actually be an expert who had survived 2 Nirvana tribulations? On the right side of the hall, the burly man with the bare chest and the woman in the purple-black gown both narrowed their eyes. The mockery in their eyes vanished, replaced by a grave expression as they stared at little Yin. Only now did they realize that the aura emanating from him was powerful enough to make even them feel a hint of danger. Where did this kid find such a powerful helper? The two exchanged glances and gradually began to restrain their earlier contempt. It seemed Lin Dong had some confidence to appear here after all. Between them, Shi Kun, dressed in black, also slowed the spinning iron ball in his hand. He lifted his head, his narrowed gaze fixed on little Yin. A blade-sharp glint of hostility flickered in his eyes. Impossible. Shi Xuan finally steadied himself, looking somewhat disheveled. His face turned as red as pig's blood. With a furious roar, his eyes, bloodshot, fixed on little Yin. A violent surge of primordial energy suddenly burst from him. He couldn't accept that he couldn't defeat this unknown figure who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. Who's this fool, daring to meddle in the affairs of the demonic rock dynasty? Shi Xuan's face was terrifyingly dark. He stepped forward, and brilliant golden light exploded from his body, clearly pushing his Nirvana golden body to the limit. His palm flipped once more, and a massive surge of primordial energy swiftly condensed into the shape of a mountain. Demonic Seal Mountain Quake Fist. Having suffered earlier, Shi Xuan dared not be careless this time. His opening move was a killing strike. The massive energy mountain took shape and came crashing down on little Yin with unstoppable force. Yet facing such a ferocious attack, little Yan's hands slowly clenched into a fist. His arms' veins bulged like writhing dragons, and a terrifying wave of power seemed to ripple from it. With a single punch upward, he struck with brute force. The booming impact resonated again. The demonic Seal Mountain Quake Fist, which had previously caused considerable trouble for Lin Dong, was shattered by little Yan's punch. The energy mountain exploded, sending a shower of energy fragments flying. Shi Xuan, who was connected to it by his mind, immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. He could not comprehend why little Yan's strength was so terrifying. As the energy light particles dispersed in midair, some people in the hall quietly sucked in a breath. If the earlier event was attributed to Shi Xuan being caught off guard, then this time, no one dared to use that excuse again. Since when did this guy have such a powerful helper? Where did he find such a formidable expert? Judging by this level of strength, he might not even be weaker than Shi Kun and the others. Whispers spread throughout the hall as people glanced at Lin Dong again. The greed in their eyes had notably diminished. They had targeted Lin Dong mainly because he came from a lower-ranked dynasty. But now, it was clear that, although Lin Dong hailed from a lower-ranked dynasty, both his strength and his companions were far from weak. Damn it! Shi Xuan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his face twisted in a vicious grimace. Just as he was about to lose control and go berserk, Shi Kun finally spoke slowly. Shi Xuan, stand down. You are not his match. Hearing Shi Kun's words, Shi Xuan's teeth clenched tightly. His eyes filled with intense resentment as he glared at Lin Dong and little Yin. In the end, he reluctantly retreated. As Shi Xuan stepped back, the eyes in the hall all turned to Shi Kun. From his body, they sensed a faint yet palpable killing intent. My friend, the demonic rock dynasty, has a deep feud with Lin Dong. I don't know how much he has paid you, but if you stay out of this, I will double his offer. Moreover, should you ever need anything in the future, as long as it is within my power, the demonic rock dynasty will assist you with all our might. What do you say? Shi Kun lifted his head and looked at little Yin, his voice low. The hall fell into a brief silence. Hearing these words, many were slightly shaken. It seemed that this towering man wasn't just an ordinary fighter. Even someone like Shi Kun hesitated to engage him lightly. While everyone was still reeling, little Yin, standing in front of Lin Dong, finally raised his head. The previously dull eyes were now streaked with bloodshot veins, staring at the crowd. Under that gaze, even Shi Kun and the others felt a chill in their hearts. Those eyes were like those of a fierce beast from ancient times. Under the intense gazes of the crowd, little Yin finally spoke. Though his voice still carried a hint of awkwardness, it possessed a ferocity that no one dared to underestimate. Anyone who wants to harm my big brother must first step over Lin Yin. The rough voice, filled with a beast-like murderous intent and ferocity, echoed within the grand hall, causing everyone's pupils to contract slightly. His big brother? Is that Lin Dong? Some of the dynasty experts looked utterly incredulous. They had assumed that this fierce and powerful figure was some helper Lin Dong had hired at a high price. But never had they thought that Lin Dong was actually this towering man's big brother. Moreover, they could tell from the tone of this fearsome individual, who had punched Shi Xuan flying and even made Shi Kun wary, that his feelings for Lin Dong, who was merely at the half-step nirvana stage, were utterly sincere, without a hint of pretense. Everything he said seemed to come from his heart. Shi Kun was also momentarily taken aback by little Yan's response. Then a sinister and vicious expression crept into his eyes. In that case, you can die along with him. As his voice fell, a violent killing intent suddenly burst out from Shi Kun. His figure moved like a ghost, appearing in midair in front of little Yin. The primordial energy fluctuations emanating from his body were far stronger than Shi Xuan's. Golden Demon Slash. Surrounded by a fierce killing intent, Shi Kun clenched his fist, and a violent golden light condensed, transforming into a terrifying golden blade. It slashed down toward little Yin with a momentum that seemed capable of splitting mountains, moving as swiftly as lightning. Before the blade even hit the ground, the grand hall was already torn apart by a fissure stretching several dozen feet. Shi Kun's initial attack displayed strength far beyond that of Shi Xuan, reaching a level nearly comparable to that of an expert who had survived 2 nirvana tribulations. Little Yin lifted his head, a crimson hue rising in his eyes. He had no intention of retreating. With a powerful grip, a massive black iron staff appeared in his hand. The staff shaft quivered as he swung it out in a powerful arc. The staff wind danced, and the air exploded with force, as if a tiger's roar echoed faintly within the whirling gust. The blade and staff shadows flashed past each other like lightning. In the next moment, under countless shocked gazes, they collided fiercely, unleashing a storm-like blast that raged wildly throughout the hall. The two fierce forces clashed like a meteor crashing into a mountain, creating a scene of incredible visual impact as they fiercely collided. At the moment of impact, a visible shockwave furiously swept out. The ground within several dozen feet around the two combatants collapsed, forcing the many nearby experts to hastily retreat, fearing being caught in the aftermath. The hall trembled violently. Suddenly, a loud crash sounded, and everyone saw Shi Kun, holding the fierce golden blade, suddenly stagger backward. His body spun swiftly in midair before he landed, but the floor where he stepped down was reduced to powder. Crack! Crack! As Shi Kun was forced back, the towering figure of Little Yin also retreated several steps, the hard floor beneath his feet shattering into countless tiny fragments. In this clash, neither side managed to gain a decisive upper hand. The eyes of everyone in the hall filled with a mix of astonishment and disbelief at this outcome. Even the burly man from the Primordial Wilderness Dynasty and the woman from the Nether Spring Dynasty were filled with a sense of gravity in their eyes. Who was Shi Kun? He was a warrior who had attempted to break through the second Nirvana tribulation. Although he failed the first time, everyone knew that after that failure, he would have a more than 70% chance of succeeding the next time. If he succeeded, he would become a true second Nirvana stage expert. Such strength would place him among the elite in the northwestern region. Yet, even so, in a direct confrontation, he hadn't been able to gain the slightest advantage over this mysterious, towering man. How could this not shock them? Shi Xuan, standing nearby, also looked shocked by this outcome. He knew his brother's strength very well. He had expected that once Shi Kun took action, he would intimidate the entire hall. Instead, it turned into a situation of evenly matched opponents. So, he does have some skills after all. The warm smile on Shi Kun's face gradually faded away, replaced by a pair of sharp, cold eyes fixed intently on Little Yin. A cruel grin spread across his face. However, your foundation is far too weak. Do you really think the two of you have the guts to challenge my demonic rock dynasty? Shi Xuan, bring that brat down for me. I want to see just how much trouble they can cause today. Given the situation, if Lin Dong and his companion were allowed to flaunt their power like this, who knows how the other dynasties would view the demonic rock dynasty? Shi Kun was determined not to let this matter rest. Yes! Upon hearing Shi Kun's command, a sinister grin appeared on Shi Xuan's face. His gaze locked onto Lin Dong with a chilling glare. Although Little Yin's presence had greatly surprised them, as long as Shi Kun could keep him occupied, Lin Dong would be easy prey. As Shi Kun's order rang out, figures suddenly shot out from the hall, many of them familiar faces, Thunder Snake and the others, who had once been captured by Lin Dong. Now, however, their eyes were filled with malice as they stared him down. Seeing this scene, many dynasties in the hall had their expressions change. It seemed the demonic rock dynasty was intent on settling this matter today, even if it meant mobilizing their full force to deal with the troublesome Lin Dong. Anyone who dares step forward dies. Little Yin swung his massive black iron staff with a fierce swipe. The terrifying force cracked the ground beneath him. The scales on the staff shimmered with a chilling light, and at the same time, a nearly feral aura swept out from him. His deep voice was filled with a murderous intent. You think you have the right to say that here? Shi Kun sneered. His figure moved again, swiftly darting forward. Golden light surged around him, and a series of violent attacks immediately enveloped Little Yin. Watching Shi Kun charge once more, a fierce glint appeared in Little Yin's eyes. He swung the black iron staff in his hand, creating afterimages as it moved with a cleaving force to meet Shi Kun's onslaught head-on. Clang! Clang! The two clashed again, their attacks even more ferocious and brutal than before, each strike aiming to kill the other. Lin Dong, let's see who can save you now. As Little Yin and Shi Kun engaged in a fierce battle, Shi Xuan's eyes gleamed with malice. He let out a sneer and charged at Lin Dong. Brilliant golden light bursting from his body like a golden god of war. Kill! As Shi Xuan made his move, Thunder Snake and the other's eyes also filled with killing intent. With a low roar, they unleashed a series of sharp, deadly attacks, all directed toward Lin Dong. Clearly, they were determined to kill. Seeing this, the surrounding dynasties quickly retreated. What had started as a minor conflict had now escalated into a full-blown battle between two powerful factions. Neither side was a simple opponent, and no one wanted to get involved in such a clash. Even though this guy has a strong helper by his side, his own strength is lacking. Now, with Shi Xuan and so many others attacking at once, it will be tough for him to hold out with just his heavenly talisman master skills, the burly man from the primordial wilderness dynasty remarked, shaking his head. In the ancient hall, the escape function of the ancient key cannot be used, added the woman in the purple-black gown from the Nether Spring dynasty, her tone calm. They had heard that Lin Dong had escaped from Shi Xuan and his group before due to the ancient key. But here, in this special place, due to the presence of the ancient secret repository, the key's ability to slip into the void was disabled. This kid seems to have miscalculated this time. In the hall, numerous eyes watched Lin Dong, who was suddenly surrounded, and many shook their heads. Lin Dong, of course, noticed these gazes around him, but contrary to their expectations, there was no sign of panic on his face. His gaze remained calm as he watched Shi Xuan and the others charge at him. Suddenly, he raised his palm, and in the next moment, a red light shot out from his sleeve. A spirit puppet? You think this can save you? Seeing the red light burst out, Shi Xuan couldn't help but sneer. Thunder Snake, who was nearby, was already a step ahead, dashing forward. A surge of powerful primordial energy gathered in his palm, and he struck at the red light with a powerful blow. Clang! Thunder Snake collided with the red light, and a crisp metallic sound rang out. The next moment, everyone saw Thunder Snake's body suddenly freeze for a moment before he was sent flying backward. He crashed into a massive stone pillar, spitting out a mouthful of blood. The sudden turn of events startled Shi Xuan and the others, who had been sneering moments before. Their eyes quickly turned to the red light, and their pupils suddenly contracted. A level 1 spirit puppet? Gasps of surprise echoed through the grand hall, and most of the onlookers felt a chill run down their spines. They could hardly believe that this young man from an obscure, low-ranking dynasty could possess such a series of powerful trump cards. Damn it, has this guy's spirit puppet evolved? A look of shock also appeared in Shi Xuan's eyes. From the spirit puppet, he could sense a powerful energy that was in no way inferior to his own. I'll hold off this spirit puppet. The rest of you, kill Lin Dong. Shi Xuan gritted his teeth. Now that Shi Kun had managed to engage the toughest opponent, Little Yin, it would be troublesome if they missed this chance to deal with Lin Dong. Bang! Bang! Just as Shi Xuan was about to intercept the blood spirit puppet, the puppet suddenly darted aside, clearing a path. Instead, it charged toward the other experts of the demonic rock dynasty, like a wolf among sheep, causing them to scatter in all directions in panic. You're courting death. Don't blame me then. Seeing the blood spirit puppet deliberately avoid attacking him and open a path instead, Shi Xuan was momentarily stunned, but then his eyes filled with ecstatic delight. He pushed off the ground with the tip of his toe, and his figure shot toward Lin Dong like lightning. He knew that as long as he could take down Lin Dong, everything else would follow. The others in the hall were also shocked by Lin Dong's actions. This guy had voluntarily let the troublesome Shi Xuan pass. Did he intend to rely on his own strength to fight against a first Nirvana stage expert? Shi Xuan's speed was incredibly fast, giving the others no time to react. Within a few breaths, he was right above Lin Dong, and then he unleashed all his primordial energy without reservation, throwing a powerful punch. Let's see how you escape this time. The immense pressure, mixed with violent energy fluctuations, swept down, cracking the ground beneath it into countless huge fissures. Shi Xuan's attack was full force, clearly not intending to give Lin Dong any chance to resist. Escape? A sneer appeared on Lin Dong's face. His expression suddenly turned icy, and with a whirl of his palm, his internal primordial energy spiritual power, and devouring force all surged up and poured into the cosmic ancient array above his dantian. Whoosh! An invisible whirlwind suddenly formed around Lin Dong. For a moment, the space seemed to warp slightly. Great devouring palm of essence and spirit. Lin Dong took a sudden step forward, his eyes turning a misty gray-black. Then, the eerie gray-black energy, a fusion of 3 different energies, burst out from his body. It quickly condensed into a palm imprint about a meter wide. Within the imprint, countless spinning black holes seemed to hide, radiating an extreme and terrifying power. As the palm imprint took shape, Lin Dong's eyes burned with intensity. This was his first time activating this fused energy, and he was eager to see just how powerful it could be. Boom! With a thought, the gray-black palm imprint moved without any hesitation, flying across the Grand Hall and crashing directly into the oncoming Shi Xuan. The gray-black palm imprint didn't create an overly dramatic spectacle, but only those with keen senses could faintly detect the bizarre and formidable energy fluctuations hidden within that gray-black hue. The onlookers in the hall, seeing Lin Dong dare to confront Shi Xuan head-on, unsurprisingly showed a hint of schadenfreude. Most of them were Nirvana stage experts, and some had even survived a Nirvana tribulation. With their insight, it was clear that Lin Dong's own primordial energy was only at the half-step Nirvana stage. As for his spiritual power, while not weak, it was only at the level of a Heavenly Talisman Master, not even a 1-mark Heavenly Talisman Master. Such abilities were hardly sufficient to contend with Shi Xuan. However, some among them, having observed the various trump cards Lin Dong had played earlier, refrained from underestimating him too much. No one could be certain whether Lin Dong still had hidden powers they weren't aware of. As thoughts churned among the many in the hall, the gray-black palm imprint collided fiercely with Shi Xuan's violent primordial energy attack. At the moment of impact, the anticipated loud explosion didn't occur. Instead, an extremely strange and powerful devouring force erupted from the gray-black palm imprint. Under this devouring force, Shi Xuan's violent energy attack abruptly weakened significantly. In contrast, the light emanating from the gray-black palm imprint grew even brighter. Break! Lin Dong's eyes were cold as ice, and a low shout burst from his lips. Bang! Under this back-and-forth struggle, Shi Xuan's seemingly ferocious attack was rapidly weakened in an eerie manner and was then completely destroyed by the whistling palm imprint. Though Shi Xuan's primordial energy attack collapsed, the gray-black palm imprint did not dissipate. Instead, it continued with undiminished force, striking Shi Xuan's body, whose eyes were now filled with horror. A low, dull sound echoed from Shi Xuan's body. He was sent flying backward, staggering in mid-air as he tried to regain his balance, but he failed. He crashed heavily into a stone pillar, the impact causing fine cracks to spread across the pillar. Shi Xuan, his body slamming into the pillar, immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Within the crimson fluid, there was a faint trace of gray-black energy. When Shi Xuan spat out a mouthful of blood, the hall fell silent once more, all whispers coming to an abrupt halt. This time, the gazes directed at Lin Dong became intensely serious. If the earlier appearance of Little Yin and the blood spirit puppet had already prevented the strong cultivators present from underestimating Lin Dong, then the raw power Lin Dong just displayed had finally erased any sense of superiority they felt towards a low-ranking dynasty. This kid is truly bizarre. The burly man from the primordial wilderness dynasty muttered under his breath, his eyes fixed on Lin Dong with a strange expression. Beside him, the woman in the purple-black gown also nodded slowly. To injure a first Nirvana stage expert like Shi Xuan with only half-step Nirvana and Heavenly Talisman Master strength was no ordinary feat. Amidst the silence, Shi Xuan finally struggled to his feet, his face filled with shock. Clearly, he hadn't recovered from the previous scene. The last time they fought, even with all his might, Lin Dong had only managed to escape from his grasp using the ancient key. It was unthinkable to him that in just a few short months, Lin Dong had become this formidable. Impossible. Shi Xuan's face twisted with disbelief. He could hardly accept that a genius of the demonic rock dynasty like himself could be defeated by an unknown upstart from a low-ranking dynasty. Cough! However, just as Shi Xuan was about to fly into a rage and launch another frenzied attack to regain his face, he was suddenly racked with violent coughs, spitting out blood streaked with traces of gray-black energy. Shi Xuan. At this moment, Shi Kun, who had been fiercely battling Little Yin, noticed the change in the situation. His expression shifted immediately, and he quickly disengaged from Little Yin, appearing beside Shi Xuan in a flash. "Don't touch me. This brat's energy is strange," Shi Xuan warned, stopping Shi Kun's hand from reaching him. His body trembled slightly, as wisps of gray-black energy rampaged through his system, corroding his primordial energy like venom and throwing his entire body into chaos. Seeing this, Shi Kun's pupils contracted slightly. He struck out with a palm from a distance, and a surge of powerful primordial energy flooded into Shi Xuan's body. Moments later, a look of shock also appeared in his eyes. The strange gray-black energy was unexpectedly tenacious, and even with his strength, it took an immense effort to completely dispel it. As the last wisp of gray-black energy dissipated from his body, Shi Xuan's complexion slightly improved, though he was clearly still severely injured. When he looked at Lin Dong again, there was no longer any trace of contempt. Instead, his gaze was filled with deep apprehension. By now, the demonic rock dynasty experts in the hall had been utterly routed by the blood spirit puppet, many of them injured and cowering behind Shi Kun. Their eyes were tinged with fear as they stared at Lin Dong, especially those like Thundersnake, who had fought Lin Dong before. They had witnessed firsthand how Lin Dong's single strike had injured Shi Xuan. Their thoughts now mirrored Shi Xuan's, especially Chen Mu, who, upon first meeting Lin Dong, hadn't even considered him worth a second glance. But now, it seemed the tables had turned. The once grand hall was in disarray, and everyone gazed at the disheveled demonic rock dynasty. Though their expressions remained calm, their hearts were already in turmoil. They all understood that once this news spread, Lin Dong's name would likely become renowned throughout the northwestern region. After all, he was the first to push the mighty demonic rock dynasty to such a desperate state. Clang! Little Yin stepped up behind Lin Dong again, his black iron staff thudding heavily onto the ground, causing a slight tremor. The blood spirit puppet also returned, standing on the other side of Lin Dong, resembling two fierce and unyielding guardians. With just the two of them and the puppet standing in the hall, their imposing presence was enough to intimidate even the powerful demonic rock dynasty. At this moment, no one dared show any sign of disdain. Those who had previously planned to snatch the ancient key from Lin Dong quietly stepped back. It would be foolish to try anything now. If even the demonic rock dynasty had been forced into such a sorry state, who would dare provoke him? The demonic rock dynasty. Not much after all. Lin Dong's gaze was calm, like a deep pool of water, as he slowly swept his eyes over Shi Kun and the others. His voice, though soft, sent a chill through everyone's hearts. This was evidently the first time anyone had dared to speak to the demonic rock dynasty in such a manner, and yet no one dared to voice any objections. "Boy, do you really think I can't deal with you?" Shi Kun's eyes were filled with a chilling coldness as he shouted harshly. "Then go ahead and try." A smirk tugged at Lin Dong's lips, and a dense, killing intent seemed to seep out from him. Some people couldn't help but gasp softly, realizing that Lin Dong was actually planning to eliminate the demonic rock dynasty. Indeed, after all the trouble the demonic rock dynasty had caused him, Lin Dong harbored a strong desire to kill. With the strength he now possessed, he was more than capable of challenging this once powerful, advanced dynasty. The two brothers, Shi Kun and Shi Xuan, were ruthless foes, and such enemies were best dealt with swiftly if the opportunity arose. Shi Kun's eyes grew even colder, and he was about to launch a furious attack. However, when he saw Little Yin behind Lin Dong slowly raising his iron staff once more, the rage in his heart had to be forcibly suppressed. Given the current situation, It seemed they didn't hold much of an advantage. Cough. My friend, this matter between you is just a misunderstanding. There's no need to escalate it to this extent. In just a few days, the ancient secret repository will open. You all hold ancient keys, and if something were to happen now, perhaps none of us would be able to enter the repository. I suggest we all take a step back. What do you think? At this moment, the burly man with the red arm finally stepped forward, speaking to Lin Dong with a smile. There are many powerful dynasties here for the ancient secret repository, some of which are difficult even for us to handle. If we want to gain something from the repository, perhaps joining forces would be better than fighting each other, added the woman in the purple-black gown, her voice calm. Lin Dong's gaze swept over them indifferently. He knew they were the leaders of the Primordial Wilderness Dynasty and the Nether Spring Dynasty, the holders of the other two ancient keys. From their words, it was clear they weren't exactly allied with the demonic Rock Dynasty, but they also didn't want to see Shi Kun and his group suffer losses because of him. I prefer to act alone, so there's no need for an alliance. But since the two of you have spoken up, I'll let today's matter slide for now. However, if the demonic Rock Dynasty tries anything foolish again, I can't guarantee I won't make a move to snatch their ancient key. Lin Dong didn't trust these advanced dynasties at all. He knew that if he hadn't just revealed his trump cards and strength, even if Shi Kun had killed him and his group, these people wouldn't have said a word in his defense. Judging by the current situation, the Primordial Wilderness Dynasty and the Nether Spring Dynasty were clearly going to interfere with his plan to eliminate the demonic Rock Dynasty. Lin Dong also knew he wasn't capable of confronting three advanced dynasties at once. Given that, it was better to retreat for now. Once inside the ancient secret repository, he would have more opportunities to deal with the demonic Rock Dynasty. Moreover, he wasn't entirely confident he could take down Shi Kun and his group right now. Hearing Lin Dong's words, the burly man and the woman with the purple-black gown both breathed a sigh of relief, though there was also a hint of regret in their expressions. They knew that their previous decision to stand by had left Lin Dong with a poor impression of them. Farewell then. I will return when it is time for the ancient secret repository to open. Lin Dong cast a glance at Shi Kun, whose face was as dark as iron, then turned to leave. As he was about to step out of the hall, he paused and looked back at some of the experts who had originally planned to snatch his ancient key. Just one more question. Do I still have the right to possess this fourth ancient key? No one answered, but the evasive glances from several people provided Lin Dong with the answer. This fierce confrontation with the demonic Rock Dynasty had clearly extinguished any lingering bad intentions these individuals might have had. No matter where one is, strength always reigns supreme.